Hello, welcome to the ESS BIZTOOLS Accountants Minute podcast. I'm Peter Towers, founder and managing director of ESS BIZTOOLS. In this presentation, we're going to discuss family businesses. Family businesses are critical to the Australian business landscape. About 70% of the 2.1 million businesses described as small medium enterprises are family businesses. These are businesses that have been started by families, are manned by families, but some of them have grown a lot bigger. They've become big corporations. And there's obviously a lot of other people involved at both the board of directors level, even senior management people may not be members of the family. And at the other extreme end, of course, we've got small tradies and small retail operations that are basically operated by the family members with their contributions, sometimes on an unpaid basis, sometimes with children working in the store. So it's an interesting landscape. I think as accountants and bookkeepers start to accept that things have got to change as far as services being made for your own survival as accountancy or bookkeeping firms, that many of you will need to have a good close look at the structure of family businesses so that you become very familiar with the operations of family businesses. You may have a number of family businesses as clients already, but if you really closely examined the structures and tried to understand the personalities and the circumstances in which family businesses are operating, and understand some of the challenges, because you need to have embraced the challenges if you're going to be an effective advisor to these people. As I see it, family businesses are a core section of your market or your potential market if you're contemplating starting a bookkeeping or an accountancy business. At ESS BIZTOOLS, we have developed a range of products and services to suit the SME market, because that is the market that the vast majority of smaller accounting firms around Australia are servicing, the SME market. The big end of town employs their own accountants and chief financial officers as on a full-time employment basis. And they are heavily reliant to require audits, and they're basically conducted by the Big Four or some of the top 100 accounting firms. So unless an SME is really growing and scaling up on a high basis, most of the SME market is accommodated by accountants supplying those services. There's probably 10,000 or 12,000 firms of accountants servicing that market, and then the same number in the bookkeeping market, or maybe even a few more. With the changes that are occurring in accounting, we need to be, I think, aware of our obligations as professional advisors to know more about the market group that we're supporting. And that's why within ESS BIZTOOLS, part of our brief is to look at the key services we're providing and to place them under appropriate headings. And I'm just going to refer to our latest update of our 3 service packages, our key product packages within ESS BIZTOOLS, to give you an idea of how we segregate the services that we're writing about and producing material that accountants and bookkeepers can utilize to supply these services. Or you could go off and do it all yourself if you wish, but it will take you a long time. So we first of all, and I'm now referring to our starter package, which is the ideal package for you to commence with if you are contemplating broadening out from primarily being a tax return preparation business into offering a range of advisory services to your clients. So we list, first of all, the benefits of the starter package. We supply resources that you're able to immediately bring up on your computer screen if you have an inquiry from a client or even a prospect, so that you can click into the subject matter that that client's talking about, so that you can quickly convey information to that person. What does this do? It establishes your credibility, that you do understand something about the issue relating to family businesses that that person's inquiring about. Now, that question could have been, I'm looking at establishing a family business and I've got some questions. Should I employ family members in this business? Opening question. What salary should I pay family members? Should each member of the family have an equal shareholding in the family business? What can I do if there is no one within the family that wants to take over from me in some future date when I wish to retire? So succession planning becomes an issue that some people start thinking about very early. And where do we get funding from if we're running a family business and the family's put in all the money that there is available or that it's prepared to invest in the business? Where do we go to from there? These are some of the questions. These are questions that I've been asked over the years by people contemplating going into a family business. How are you going to answer them? Our material is prepared to assist you in answering those type of questions. I think your clients also need to have firm foundations established in their business. Now, what are firm foundations? They're basically system notes that sets out the process. So what's the process if your client's going to offer credit facilities to their customers? Do they ask the client or would-be client to complete a credit application form? Do they then check the credit application form? Do they pick up the phone and make some inquiries? They need to ensure that they're not inheriting someone else's problem because that other business has complained that they're taking 80 days to pay their bills and they want them to get it down to under 40 days and they've decided they're going to shift to someone else. Your client might end up with that problem. So firm foundations are very important. How do they negotiate with suppliers? Do they negotiate with suppliers before they terminate their arrangements with their current supplier? Because they may find out in these current difficult circumstances that the new supplier is not very keen about giving them 30-day credit terms at the beginning. They may say, well, we'll start supplying you, but we want cash with the order, and we'll reconsider our position in 3 months' time. So they need to have a system of processes that they're going to go through when they're negotiating with suppliers. These negotiations should be confirmed in writing and should be followed through and should be undertaken before they've made any major move. And I think what this does is introduce to your firm some interesting and challenging work. Every accountant that I talk to all around Australia asks me if I know where he can get or she can get some staff, some experienced accountants to work for them. There seems to be an enormous problem with attraction and retention of talent within accountancy firms. I think if you're offering a new variety of work, this will help. And what's the team preparation for the delivery of advisory services? Well, we've got business advisory training packages, 13 modules of it. The SME needs analysis to give you some guidance on the doc, set out in doc points of some of the questions that a client might ask you, or some of the items that you could start discussing. And one of them, of course, could be family business issues, that you deliberately bring it up in a conversation. And the way that you can create this atmosphere to discuss these issues is through communication. And one of the main communication channels that we develop at ESS BIZTOOLS is a monthly newsletter, which we call Business Plus. Now, in Business Plus, we write 4 to 6 separate articles each month looking at different aspects of running a small business or a larger business, a scaling up business, but still technically a small business. Because we want to create a reaction from your clients, that a client of one of our subscribers says, geez, this is great. I want to know more about this. I'll ring my accountant or bookkeeper and talk to them about it. So we want you prepared. You've understood. You've done some reading. You've grasped the situation. And we have 340 papers on 60 different subject headings that are available for you to badge with your firm name if you're a subscriber and send it out to your clients. Because a written article goes a long way to confirming in your clients' minds what you discuss with them on the telephone or even in a one-on-one meeting. People don't remember all that. They're with you for 20 minutes, for half an hour. Various universities have conducted surveys and it's a fairly low retention rate. But by sending them a written article that relates to the subject matter that the client had asked you to discuss with them, helps with that retention. And it helps in getting the message across to other members of the family, because invariably those articles, papers we call them, get passed around within the family. Because I've seen some over the years that have come back with notes written all over them, as various members of the family have read it and made their comments, given their 2 bobs worth as to what they think. And in our system, we have 12 client seminars or webinars that you can present. They're self-prepared. All you do is need to have a Zoom subscription and convey to your clients and prospects that you're running a session on family businesses. And you can communicate. And what's all this doing? It's getting the message across to your clients, to your prospects, in other words, your marketplace, that you have a understanding and an affinity with family businesses. They're not a nuisance to you. They're very important because they're going to be a very important contributor to the financial success of your accountancy or bookkeeping firm. So you need to understand them. Perhaps you should be getting involved in some family organizations and going to meetings, offering to be a keynote speaker at normal meetings or at special conferences, of looking at a whole range of issues that relate to family businesses, some of which we're going to cover in this discussion with you. So I hope that gives you a bit of an understanding of the framework in which we're making this presentation to you. So the result that we're looking for is that your clients are accepting that besides being a very good preparer of tax returns or preparer of basic accounting records as a bookkeeper, that you can also talk to them about some of these very important issues relating to running family businesses. And when it comes to how much money do I pay the 18-year-old child that's now working in the business, your son or daughter, that's very important, isn't it? I don't think you can pay them any less. than what another 18-year-old would receive. But you'll cause some problems if you're paying them double. So you need to be having those sorts of discussions with your clients. Where do family businesses get their funding from? It's been a problem for 100 years and probably more. Because families do have some wealth and do have some spare money in some cases that they can invest in businesses. But at the very beginning, that might be mum and dad's money that's going into the business, and the children are young. But as the children grow and the family grows, family members get interested in other activities. The family business might be growing and being quite successful, but there's a reluctance within the family to continue to invest capital funds into the family business. So where do you go? Up to 8 years ago, it was rather difficult, because if you wanted to go to the public to raise some capital, you had what is called Section 708 of the Corporations Act. But it's a rather restrictive piece of legislation, but it served the SME market very well over the years. Up to $2 million can be raised from 20 investors in 12 months. But you've got to be careful of a few things, like the 50 shareholder limit for a private company. You start issuing lots of 20 new shareholders a year, you will soon get to 50 shareholders. And then the company has to convert to an unlisted public company, which might not be what the family wants to do. 8 years ago, the then Liberal government, led by Malcolm Turnbull, who had an understanding of the problems that family businesses and small businesses who were involved in business activities have in raising funding, introduced crowdsourced funding equity raising. And it's a great opportunity if the international turnover of the company is under $25 million. And if the gross value of assets on a worldwide basis is under $25 million, and that the company is not listed on a stock exchange anywhere in the world. Irrespective of the type of business, as long as the entity is a private company or an unlisted public company, up to $5 million can be raised in 12 months from a process called crowdsourced funding equity raising. The Australian Security Investment Commission has appointed people with Australian financial services licenses as the crowdsourced funding intermediaries who are identified in the legislation, which was created by amendments to the Corporations Act to bring this whole concept into play. So there is an opportunity. So you could start talking to your client about it. Now, some family businesses might be very reluctant to bring in outsiders, but if they need the money and they haven't got the assets to offer as security, and there's not a enthusiasm to contribute more financial support directly from the family members, this opportunity should be looked at. And that's the reason I think it's very important that you understand this opportunity so that you can confidently talk to your clients about it, that you understand the process for raising crowdsourced funding equity raising. And over $400 million has been raised from crowdsourced funding equity raising capital raisings in Australia over that 8-year period. I'm disappointed with that amount, but at least $400 million has been raised. I think a lot more could have been raised if accountants and bookkeepers had a better appreciation of how the whole process works. And I really would like to see that in 2025-26, there is more involvement in the process. And the process can be very rewarding for accounting firms, because each of these companies is going to need an updated business plan, a budget and cash flow forecast, real predictive accounting reports for at least the next 3 years, a valuation of the business, the directors and leadership team to have a clear understanding of the crowdsourced funding equity raising process. Who's going to give them all this? You. And where are you going to get that information from? From us. Because within ESS BIZTOOLS, we have a full product package on crowdsourced funding equity raising. From the basic inquiry that I've just given you, what the basic inquiry is. We need some money. Where are we going to get it from? If it's a good business or a business with a vision that investors may be interested in, that can work. There's also another very interesting capital raising opportunity. If you're acting for a family business that's quite small, that's been undertaking research activities, whether they're a company or a partnership or a trust or a sole trader, at this stage doesn't matter. But if they've been undertaking activities that involve innovation and thinking, research, they could possibly raise capital as an early stage innovation company. This was also introduced 8 years ago by the Malcolm Turnbull government. And Turnbull had been apparently a major investor in similar types of companies as earlier in his career. And I have read that he was quite successful in those investments. So he understood the difficulties that small entrepreneurial innovative businesses have in raising capital. So that legislation was introduced that the entity had to become a company and that new young companies with innovative ideas, research activities could in fact be submitted for assessment as to whether they met the guidelines. And that's, again, another podcast and another webinar. But if they met the guidelines, they were able to raise capital. And the government introduced a carrot to the investors who invested at that stage in the status determination process. Because the government, led by Mr. Turnbull, understood the difficulties that young companies have in raising capital. And these young companies could, of course, be family businesses. And a lot of them were or are. So they introduced into the legislation that an investor would receive 20% of their investment as a tax credit to be deducted off their tax bills. And if they couldn't absorb it all in that immediate year, it just kept on rolling forward. And then the biggest carrot of all was, if you hold these shares that you're receiving as part of the status determination for more than 12 months and less than 10 years, you will pay no capital gains tax when you sell those shares. And the gain could have been a considerable sum of money. If you hold the shares for longer than 10 years, the company can be revalued at the 10th year and a new base cost price is determined. There'll be capital gains tax paid after that. Do you understand this process? Because this is also very important about the concept of supplying advice to family businesses. It shows them that you're aware of the opportunities. You've got knowledge of what's going on in the marketplace. And there are other opportunities, of course. We could talk venture capital and those, but at this stage, I just want to restrict what I'm saying to Section 708 of the Corporations Act. Don't forget that it's there. Crowdsourced funding, equity raising, early stage innovation company. And to receive all of the product summaries, the notes, the information to inform your clients. We've got all of that within the ESS BIZTOOLS product packages to enable you to answer those questions. One of the challenges that a lot of family businesses have is who's going to take over? What's the succession plan? What's happening with the management team? And some of them go through a lot of worry and struggle to determine whether we should be bringing in some outsiders into the key positions. They might have outsiders working in the lower levels of the business, but do we bring in an outside director who's got nothing to do with the family and ask that person to be on our board of directors to give us advice, make comments? Many family businesses are doing it. There's a family business association that looks at these type of issues. There's an annual conference your clients could go to. Join the Family Business Association, of course. What other services could you provide to them? At times in family businesses, there's a skip a generation concept introduced, because mum and dad may have started the business when the kids were only very young, 3 or 4 or 5. Fast forward 20 years, the children have grown up, of course. Some of them are married. Some of them may have been to university or completed a trade or want to live in some overseas country. So they're not here. They're not involved in the business. They've got their activities. But there may be a couple of smart grandkids that are hanging around pop all the time and wanting to work on school holidays and that within the business. They've got potential, but they need to be trained and educated first. And that gap might be another 10 or 15 years. So skipping a generation and bringing in an experienced external person to lead the family business is not unknown. And of course, as family businesses grow, it becomes more and more a strategy that might be looked at. There's a lot of considerations in family businesses that are challenges that you need to have at least thought about and contemplated. You know, children with different abilities who are working in the business, do they all get paid the same amount of money? That will probably lead to resentment from the capable persons who are being held back. That'll be the way they look at it, because their cousin, whilst not as smart as them, they've got to be paid the same rate that person. And it can also affect the shareholding in the business, where the talented persons might say, I'm not staying here and ending up with 1% of the business. I'm vital to this business's success. I want to have a bigger percentage ownership than what my cousin, who is not contributing anything. So conflicts can arise in a family business. We promote the concept of family councils in our material. This is where the family can come together to discuss issues. And I think it's necessary to be thinking about and talking to your clients about a family type of get together and a business, so that they're not all just intermingled in together. Because there can be tensions within the business activities that most families don't want to have flow over into the family. They don't want Christmas dinner ruined because cousin A is having a dispute with cousin B about something to do with the business. And a lot of this can occur where cousin A works in the business, but cousin B doesn't. And cousin B's part of the shareholding and is having a go at cousin A over Christmas lunch about the very low dividend that might have been paid that year. These issues will arise, and as advisors, you will get involved in some of these disputes. So family businesses are challenging, they're interesting, and they are the rock on which the Australian SME market is anchored. So if we are going to be a worthwhile contributor to the success of the family businesses that we have as our clients, we must be an informed, interesting, and enthusiastic advisor to these firms. We cannot just sit back and say, no, we're only here to prepare the profit and loss account and the balance sheet and to tell you it's correct. That won't work in dealing with family businesses. So I hope you enjoy the challenge of servicing family businesses. I would like to invite you to visit our website, www.essbiztools.com.au, and just look at some of the range of services. If you would like to have a complimentary one-on-one, about 40-minute webinar with me to discuss how these types of packages which we have developed based on my experience as an accountant, both in a listed public company where I was the chief financial officer and company secretary, and as an accountancy firm principal, and as a consultant and an advisor on a major Australian government program commercialising emerging technology, please contact me. Send me an email, please. peter@essbiztools.com.au. Stay safe. Have a great day. And incidentally, we have an interesting webinar that's on Wednesday, the 28th of May, that if you do have the opportunity to attend, or you can register and we will send you the recording if you don't actually have time to attend. It's on scaling up SME success. And that's where a lot of our SME companies, family businesses could be headed, with proper planning and proper encouragement and enthusiasm from you, their professional advisor. So that's on Wednesday, the 28th of May at 11 a.m. AEST, Scaling Up SME Success. Have a great day. Goodbye.